The Great Hall of the Kalari Dominion had not seen such fear in 1,000 years. Ambassador Thielen stood before the council, his pale blue skin covered in dust and dried blood. His hands shook as he held out a small device that projected images of burning cities and falling ships. "Please," Thielen said, his voice breaking. "The Morthic swarm has taken 6 of our worlds. They do not negotiate. They do not accept surrender. They simply consume everything in their path." The council members sat in their high seats, watching the images with cold eyes. There were 12 species represented here, each one powerful in their own right. But power meant nothing against the Morthic. Everyone knew this. High Arbiter Vorath leaned forward. He was a tall creature with gray scales and eyes like black stones. "Ambassador, we have heard your plea, but the Dominion's fleet is already stretched thin. The Morthic have attacked 3 other sectors this cycle. We cannot spare ships for the Veth Collective. Then we will die," Thielen said simply. "All of us, every man, woman, and child on our remaining worlds." A heavy silence fell over the hall. The council members looked at each other, but none spoke. They had their own people to protect, their own worlds to defend. The Veth were a small species with few resources. Saving them would cost too much thought. In the corner of the hall, an old figure stirred. Elder Selah was ancient, even by galactic standards. Her species lived for thousands of years, and she had seen empires rise and fall like waves upon a shore. She rarely spoke at these meetings anymore. Most thought she came only out of habit. "There is another option," Selah said, her voice thin but clear. Vorath turned to her with barely hidden annoyance. "Elder, this is not the time for old stories." "It is exactly the time," Selah replied. She stood slowly and walked toward the center of the hall. "How many of you know of the quarantine zone in Sector 7? A few council members shifted in their seats. The quarantine zone was forbidden space. Ships that entered never returned. It had been sealed for over 800 years, and no one remembered exactly why. "The zone is empty," said a council member from the Dreth Coalition. "Our probes have confirmed this many times. There is nothing there but dead planets and silence." Selah smiled, showing teeth worn by age. "Your probes show you what they want you to see. The zone is not empty. It is home to a species that has been hiding from us, waiting." "What species?" Thielen asked, desperate hope entering his voice. "They call themselves humans," Selah said. "They come from a world called Earth, a death world by our standards. Their planet tried to kill them every day of their existence. Extreme temperatures, deadly predators, diseases that could wipe out entire populations. And yet they survived. They did more than survive. They thrived." Vorath made a sound of disgust. "This is mythology, Elder. Children's tales, is it?" Selah asked. She touched a panel on her wrist, and new images appeared in the air. They were old recordings, grainy and damaged by time. They showed bipedal creatures with soft skin and determined eyes. They showed ships of strange design cutting through space. They showed battles where these creatures fought against impossible odds and won. 800 years ago, humans made first contact with the Velkath Empire," Selah continued. "The Velkath tried to enslave them, as they did with all new species they encountered. The war lasted 12 years. At the end, the Velkath Empire no longer existed." The council chamber went completely silent. "That is impossible," Vorath said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "The Velkath were the greatest military power of their age, and humans ended them," Selah said. "Not through superior technology. Their ships were primitive by Velkath standards. They won because they simply refused to lose. They fought when logic said to surrender. They sacrificed themselves so others could live. They found ways to win that no other species could imagine." She turned to face the full council. After the war, the surviving galactic powers made a decision. Humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable. So they created the quarantine zone. They told humans it was for their protection. They told everyone else that the zone was forbidden. And for 800 years, humans have been alone in that small corner of space. If this is true, Thailand said slowly, why would they help us? We abandoned them. We locked them away like criminals. Because of who they are, Sayla said. The old records describe humans as many things. Violent, stubborn, reckless. But they also describe something else. Humans cannot ignore suffering. When they see the weak being hurt by the strong, something inside them breaks. They must act. They cannot help themselves. Vorath stood from his seat, his scales rippling with anger. Enough of this nonsense. We will not make policy based on ancient legends and fairy tales. The quarantine zone is forbidden for good reason. Anyone who enters will be considered a criminal. The council voted. One by one, they chose to abandon the Veth Collective to their fate. It was the logical choice. The safe choice. Thielen watched the votes appear on the screen above. Each one a death sentence for his people. When it was over, he turned and walked out of the great hall without a word. He returned to his small ship alone. His crew had died getting him here. Now he would die returning home. It seemed fitting somehow Dodd, but as he prepared for the journey, Sayla's words echoed in his mind. Humans cannot ignore suffering. A death world species that refused to surrender. Beings of myth who had destroyed an empire. Thailand's hands moved across his controls. He changed his course, pointing his ship toward the Forbidden Zone. It was a fool's hope. Probably just an old woman's fantasy. But his people were dying. And hope was all he had left. The ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, carrying one desperate ambassador toward a species that most believed did not exist. Behind him. In the great hall, Elder Sayla watched his ship's signature disappear from the sensors. She smiled softly. They will come, she whispered to no one. They always come. In the darkness of space, in a corner of the galaxy that had been silent for 800 years, something was about to wake up. And the galaxy would never be the same. The USS Resolute had been on patrol for 3 months when the signal came. Commander Daniel Porter was drinking coffee in his ready room, reviewing crew reports that all said the same thing. Nothing to report. No contacts. No threats. Just empty space and distant stars. That was the reality of serving in the quarantine zone. Humanity had been alone for so long that most people had forgotten there was anyone else out there. The old stories talked about alien empires and great wars, but those were just history now. Legends from another time. Commander to the bridge, Lieutenant Maria Santos said over the intercom. Her voice was calm but tight. We have something. Porter set down his coffee and walked to the bridge. The crew was already at their stations, staring at their screens with expressions of disbelief. What do we have? Porter asked. Santos pointed to the main display. A ship, sir. Alien design. It crossed into our space about 20 minutes ago, and then suffered some kind of systems failure. It's drifting now. Porter studied the image. The ship was small, barely bigger than one of their shuttles. Its design was unlike anything in their databases. Smooth curves and organic shapes that seemed to flow into each other. Life signs? He asked. Dr. Kevin Shaw checked his instruments. One, sir. Weak but stable. The ship's life support is failing. Whoever is in there has maybe an hour left. Porter made his decision without hesitation. Bring them aboard. Full medical team standing by. And Santos put the ship on yellow alert. We don't know what we're dealing with here. 20 minutes later, Porter stood in the medical bay, watching as the doctors worked on the alien they had rescued. The creature was humanoid, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Its body was thin and fragile-looking, covered in cuts and burns. He's stable, the chief medical officer reported. remarkable physiology. Different from ours, but similar enough that we could treat the major injuries. The alien's eyes opened. He looked around the room with growing confusion and fear. When his gaze settled on Porter, he made a sound that might have been a scream or might have been a prayer. "It's all right," Porter said, raising his hand slowly. "You're safe. We're not going to hurt you." The alien spoke rapidly in a language none of them understood. Dr. Shaw moved closer with a translation device, a piece of technology they had developed centuries ago in hope of this exact moment. After a few adjustments, the device began to work. The alien's words became clear. "You are real," the alien whispered. "The humans. You are real." Porter felt something shift in his chest. After 800 years of isolation, humanity was finally meeting another species again. He had trained for this moment his entire career, but nothing could truly prepare him for it. "Yes," Porter said. "We are real. My name is Daniel Porter. What is yours?" "Thielen," the alien replied. "I am Ambassador Thielen of the Veth Collective. I came here because my people are dying, and the old stories said that humans would help those who could not help themselves." Over the next hour, Thielen told them everything. The Morthic Swarm, the Burning Worlds, the Council's refusal to send aid, the ancient myths about humans that had driven him to risk his life crossing into forbidden space. Porter listened without interruption. When Thielen finished, the ambassador looked at him with desperate eyes. "Will you help us?" Thielen asked. "I know we have no right to ask. Your people were abandoned by the galaxy, locked away and forgotten. But my people are dying. Children are dying. And I have nowhere else to go." Porter turned to look at his crew. Santa stood with her arms crossed, her face hard but her eyes troubled. Shaw was reviewing data about the Morthic, his expression growing darker with each passing second. Around the bridge, other crew members waited for their commander to speak. "I need to contact Fleet Command," Porter said finally. "This decision is not mine to make alone." He walked to the communications station and opened the secure channel to Admiral Patricia Cole. She was the highest authority in the human fleet, a woman who had spent her entire life preparing for the day when humanity would return to the galactic stage. Porter told her everything. When he finished, there was a long silence. "Commander," Admiral Cole said, "do you believe this alien is telling the truth?" Porter looked back at Thielen, who sat in a medical bed surrounded by technology he could not understand, holding on to hope like a drowning man holds onto a rope. "Yes, Admiral. I do." Another silence. Then Cole spoke again, her voice carrying the weight of 800 years of waiting. "The quarantine was never our choice, Commander. It was forced upon us by species that feared what we might become. We have spent centuries building our strength, improving our technology, preparing for the day when we would rejoin the galaxy. Perhaps that day has come, Admiral?" Porter asked, hardly daring to hope. "You have authorization to proceed, Commander. Help these people. Show the galaxy what humanity truly is. And Commander, be careful. The universe forgot us once. Let's make sure they never forget us again." Porter closed the channel and turned to his crew. "Set course for Veth space. Maximum speed." Santa smiled grimly. "About time we stopped hiding." Thielen watched them move with quick efficiency, barking orders and preparing for battle. He had come seeking a myth, a legend from ancient stories. Instead, he had found something far more powerful. He had found people who could not ignore suffering. People who chose to fight even when they had every reason to stay hidden. People who were about to change the galaxy forever. The USS Resolute jumped into faster-than-light travel, carrying humanity toward a war that had nothing to do with them. But that was the thing about humans. Thielen was beginning to understand. They did not need a reason to help. They only needed to know that someone was in pain, and they were coming. The colony world of Arundel was burning. From orbit, Commander Porter could see the fire spreading across the largest continent. Morthic warships hung in the sky like black insects, raining destruction on the cities below. Streams of refugees fled toward the mountains, but there was nowhere safe to go. How many ships? Porter asked. Lieutenant Santos checked their readings. 12 Morthic vessels, sir. All combat class. They haven't noticed us yet. And on the ground? Thousands of Morthic soldiers. They're targeting civilian centers, schools, hospitals. Santos's voice was steady, but her hands were tight on her console. Sir, there are children down there. Porter looked at the tactical display. 12 enemy ships against one. The math was not good. Any reasonable commander would withdraw, call for reinforcements, wait for better odds. But those children could not wait. All hands to battle stations, Porter said. Arm all weapons. Santos, I want targeting solutions on those warships. Start with the ones closest to the refugee columns. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Crew members ran to their positions, systems powered up, and the Resolute transformed from a patrol ship into a weapon. Thalen stood in the corner, watching with wide eyes. Commander, there are 12 of them. You cannot possibly win this fight. Porter smiled without humor. Ambassador, there are some things you should know about humans. We don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for. The Resolute dropped out of hiding and accelerated toward the Morthic formation. For a moment, nothing happened. The enemy ships continued their bombardment, unaware of the new arrival. Then their sensors detected the human vessel, and confusion spread through the Morthic fleet. On the lead warship, Commander Vexel studied the unknown ship with growing uncertainty. His species had conquered dozens of worlds. They had files on every known vessel in the galaxy. But this ship matched nothing in their records. Identify that craft, Vexel ordered. Unable to comply, his tactical officer replied. Design is completely unknown. It appears to be using technology we have never seen before. Open a channel. Warn them away. The channel opened and Van Vexel spoke with the confidence of a predator addressing prey. Unknown vessel, you have entered Morthic hunting grounds. Leave now or be destroyed. The response came back in a language the Morthic had to translate. When the words became clear, Vexel felt the first hint of doubt he had experienced in years. This is Commander Daniel Porter of the human vessel Resolute. You are attacking innocent civilians. You have one chance to withdraw. Take it, humans. The words stirred something in the racial memory of the Morthic. Old warnings passed down from generation to generation. Stories of a species so dangerous that the entire galaxy had agreed to lock them away. But those were just stories. And Vexel had 12 ships. Destroy them, he ordered. The Morthic warships turned their weapons toward the Resolute and fired. Energy beams and missiles filled the space between the fleets. Porter watched the incoming fire on his display. Santos, execute Pattern Delta. The Resolute moved in ways the Morthic had never seen before. It spun and rolled, diving between beams that should have destroyed it. Human pilots had spent centuries flying through asteroid fields and navigating impossible terrain. Dodging enemy fire was almost simple by comparison. Then the Resolute fired back. The first Morthic ship exploded before anyone understood what had happened. The second lost power and began to drift. The third took a direct hit to its weapons array and went dark. On the surface of Arundel, Veth refugees looked up at the sky in disbelief. Someone was fighting the Morthic. Someone was winning. Get those people out of here, Porter ordered. Santos, you have the bridge. I'm sending a ground team. Sergeant Lisa Grant was already waiting in the shuttle bay with her squad. They were Marines, trained for exactly this kind of mission. Rescue operations in hostile territory. Getting civilians out when everyone else said it was impossible. You know the mission, Grant told her team. Find the refugees. Protect them. Get them to safety. And if any Morthic get in your way, put them down." The shuttle dropped through the atmosphere like a falling star. Grant watched the burning landscape approach and felt something hard and cold settle in her chest. She had seen recordings of what the Morthic did to conquered populations. She had seen the mass graves and the slave pens, but not today. Not while she was breathing. The shuttle landed near a group of refugees who were pinned down by Morthic ground troops. Grant was the first one out, her weapon already firing. The other Marines followed, forming a protective line between the aliens and the civilians. The Veth had never seen humans before. They were smaller than expected, with soft skin and no natural weapons. But they moved like predators, fast and precise and utterly without fear. A young Veth child stood frozen in the middle of the battlefield, too scared to move. Grant saw a Morthic soldier raising its weapon toward the child. She did not think. She simply moved, putting herself between the weapon and the child. The blast hit her armor and knocked her back, but she did not fall. She returned fire, and the Morthic dropped. Then she knelt beside the child and spoke softly, even though the girl could not understand her words. "It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you." Above them, the space battle continued. 2 more Morthic ships fell to the Resolute's guns. The remaining vessels began to withdraw. Unable to understand how one ship was defeating them so completely, Commander Vexel watched his fleet crumble and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Send word to War Chief Draxon. Tell him what happened here. Tell him about the humans." The Morthic fled, leaving Arundel scarred but alive. On the surface, Grant carried the Veth child to safety while her squad gathered the other refugees. The little girl clung to her armor, still shaking but no longer crying. Nearby, an elderly Veth male watched the humans work. Tears ran down his blue face. "The Mythwalkers," he whispered. "They came. After all these years, they actually came." The word spread across the planet and then beyond. Through refugee networks and hidden communications, the message traveled to every corner of the galaxy. Humans were real, and they had entered the war. The Galactic Council chamber had never been louder. Representatives from a dozen species shouted over each other, demanding answers that no one could give. On the main display, footage from Arundel played on repeat. A single unknown ship destroying Morthic warships. Soldiers in strange armor rescuing civilians. A species that should not exist, fighting a war that was not their own. High Arbiter Vorath slammed his fist against his podium. Silence. "There will be order in this chamber." The shouting slowly died down. Vorath looked at Ambassador Thielen, who stood in the center of the hall with a calm expression that bordered on satisfaction. "Explain this," Vorath demanded. "How is any of this possible?" Thielen smiled. "I told you, High Arbiter. I went to the quarantine zone, and I found humans. Everything the old stories said about them is true. They are real, they are powerful, and they chose to help us." "One ship defeated 12 Morthic vessels," a council member said, disbelief clear in her voice. "Our best cruisers cannot achieve such results. Human technology has advanced significantly during their isolation," Thielen replied. 800 years is a long time. They did not waste it. Elder Sayla rose from her seat, and the chamber fell silent. When someone her age spoke, even the most arrogant politicians listened. "I have studied the old records," she said. "Before the quarantine, humans were considered primitive by galactic standards. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. But they compensated with something that no other species could match." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Adaptability, creativity, the ability to learn from defeat and come back stronger." "What are you saying?" Vorath asked. "I am saying that we locked away a species that evolves faster than any other in known space. We gave them 800 years to grow. And now they have emerged, and they are no longer primitive. Sayla's old eyes were sharp. We created our own nightmare. A rumble of fear passed through the council. For centuries, they had believed the quarantine zone was empty, a dead region of space, useful only as a buffer between empires. Now they learned that it contained a species that could single-handedly change the balance of power in the galaxy not far from the council chambers. On a massive warship at the heart of Morthic territory, War Chief Draxon studied the same footage with very different emotions. He was not afraid. He was fascinated. Draxon had conquered 40 worlds. He had broken species that resisted and enslaved those that surrendered. No one had ever truly challenged him. The galaxy was full of prey pretending to be predators, but these humans were different. He could see it in the way they fought. No hesitation. No fear. They moved like creatures who had spent their entire existence fighting for survival. Interesting, Draxon said softly. Finally, something interesting. He called his officers together and gave them new orders. The Veth could wait. The real prize had just revealed itself. He would find these humans, learn their weaknesses, and crush them. Then the galaxy would know that the Morthic had no equal. Draxon gathered half his fleet and set course for the last known location of the human vessel in a quiet sector of space. Far from any inhabited world, the USS Resolute waited at a rendezvous point. Commander Porter stood on the bridge, watching the stars and thinking about what came next. His ship had taken damage in the battle. Nothing critical, but enough to remind him that they were mortal. One ship could not win a war. They needed reinforcements. They came an hour later. 3 more human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took positions around the Resolute. Admiral Patricia Cole's flagship, the USS Defiant, led the formation. Cole transported to the Resolute to meet with Porter personally. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. But when she smiled, she looked almost young again. "You did well, Commander," she said. "The footage from Arundel has spread across the entire galaxy. Everyone knows about us now. Is that a good thing, Admiral?" Porter asked. "It's the only thing. We could not hide forever. The galaxy was going to find us eventually. Better that they find us helping innocents than cowering in our corner of space." Thielen approached them, and Cole studied the alien ambassador with open curiosity. "So you are the one who started all this. The one who believed in myths." "Your people exceeded every story," Thielen replied. "On Arundel, I watched a human soldier take a weapon blast meant for a Veth child. A child she had never met, from a species she had only known for days. Why would she do that?" Cole glanced at Porter, who shrugged. "Because the child needed help. That's reason enough for us." The Admiral nodded. "Ambassador, I want to be clear about something. We did not come here to be saviors. We are not gods or mythical heroes. We are just people. People who believe that standing by while innocents die is the worst kind of cowardice." "What happens now?" Thielen asked. "Now we finish what we started," Cole said. "The Morthic will not stop because of one lost battle. They will come back harder. And when they do, we will be ready." Alarms suddenly filled the Resolute's bridge. Santa shouted a warning that made everyone's blood run cold. Multiple contacts dropping out of FTL. Morthic signatures. 30, 40, 50 ships. Through the viewport, they could see the enemy fleet arriving. Wave after wave of warships, more than they had ever seen gathered in one place. At the center of the formation was a vessel twice the size of any other, covered in weapons and armored like a fortress. Draxon's flagship. The war chief had found them. "All ships, battle formation," Cole ordered, her voice calm despite the overwhelming odds. "Launch fighters. Power all weapons." Porter looked at his crew. They were afraid. Anyone would be. But beneath the fear, he saw something else. Determination. defiance, the stubborn human refusal to surrender no matter the odds. "You heard the Admiral," he said. "Let's show them what we're made of." The human fleet moved to meet the Morthic horde. 4 ships against 50. It should have been a slaughter, Dodd. It was going to be a battle that the galaxy would never forget. The battle began with fire and death. Morthic weapons lit up the darkness of space, pouring destruction toward the tiny human fleet. Admiral Cole's ships scattered, using their superior speed to avoid the worst of the barrage. But there were too many enemies. A Morthic destroyer caught the USS Valor with a direct hit, tearing through its hull. The ship broke apart, crew members dying in the vacuum before anyone could save them. "Valor is down," Santos reported, her voice tight. "We've lost contact with all hands." Commander Porter felt each death like a physical blow. Those were his people, his species. The first humans to die in combat against aliens in 800 years. "Keep fighting," he ordered. "Make their sacrifice mean something." On his flagship, War Chief Draxon watched the battle with growing pleasure. The humans were good, better than any enemy he had faced before. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. It was only a matter of time. "Concentrate fire on the largest vessel," he commanded. "Kill their leader, and the rest will fall." 20 Morthic ships turned their weapons toward Admiral Cole's flagship. The Defiant shuddered under the assault, its shields failing section by section. Cole gripped her command chair as explosions rocked the bridge. "All power to forward shields. Keep us in the fight." "Admiral," her tactical officer shouted, "we can't take much more of this." In that moment, with death closing in from every direction, Lieutenant Maria Santos saw something on her tactical display. A pattern in the Morthac formation. A weakness. "Commander," she said to Porter, "I have an idea. It's risky, but it might work." Porter looked at her. Santos was young, but she had the best tactical mind he had ever seen. If she saw an opportunity, it was real. "Tell me." "Draxon's flagship is the key. The other ships are following its lead, coordinating through its command network. If we take it out, their whole formation will fall apart." "We can't get close enough to hit it," Porter said. "It's surrounded by escorts." Santos nodded. "That's the risky part. Someone needs to draw those escorts away. Act as bait while another ship makes a run at the flagship." Porter understood what she was suggesting. One ship would have to sacrifice itself to give the others a chance. He looked at his crew, at the faces of people who had trusted him with their lives. "The Resolute started this," he said quietly. "We'll finish it." He opened a channel to Admiral Cole. "Admiral, Lieutenant Santos has a plan. We're going to make a run at the center of their formation. When the escorts come for us, you hit Draxon's flagship with everything you have." Cole was silent for a moment. She knew what Porter was offering. His ship, his crew, his life. "Daniel," she said softly, using his first name for the first time in years. "Are you sure?" Porter looked at his bridge crew. Every single one of them nodded. "We're sure, Admiral. It's been an honor." He closed the channel and turned to Santos. "Take us in, Lieutenant." Full speed. The Resolute accelerated toward the heart of the Morthic fleet. Enemy ships turned to intercept, just as Santos had predicted. 20 escorts broke formation to chase down the lone human vessel that dared to charge their lines. The Resolute twisted and spun, avoiding fire that should have destroyed it 10 times over. Santos flew like a woman possessed, finding paths through the chaos that seemed impossible. But the damage mounted. Decks decompressed. Crew members died at their stations. "Shields are gone," Dr. Shaw reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. "Keep going," Porter ordered. Draxon watched the suicidal charge with confusion. What were these humans doing? One ship could not threaten his flagship. They were throwing their lives away for nothing. Then he saw the other human ships changing course. With so many escorts chasing the Resolute, The path to his flagship was almost clear. "No," Draxon whispered. "Get those ships back in formation. Now." Too late. The Defiant and the remaining human vessel opened fire on Draxon's flagship with everything they had. Missiles and energy beams slammed into the massive ship, overwhelming its defenses. Draxon felt his command deck shake beneath him. Warning alarms screamed. His officers shouted about hull breaches and failing systems. "Impossible," he said. "They can't defeat me. I am the war chief. I am invincible." The next volley hit his reactor core. The flagship exploded in a ball of white fire that lit up the entire battlefield. Across the Morthic fleet, chaos erupted. Without Draxon's command network, the ships lost coordination. Captains who had never made independent decisions found themselves alone and confused. The human ships pressed their advantage. The Defiant, wounded but still fighting, cut through the disorganized enemy formation. Morthic vessels began to flee, their confidence shattered along with their flagship. On the Resolute, Porter watched the enemy retreat and allowed himself a moment of relief. His ship was barely holding together. They had lost over a third of their crew, but they were alive. "Santis," he said, "remind me to give you a medal when this is over." She laughed, exhausted but triumphant. "I'll hold you to that, sir." Hours later, when the last Morthic ships had fled and the human fleet had gathered its survivors, Admiral Cole broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Every species that had watched the battle, every council member who had dismissed humans as myth, heard her words. "This is Admiral Patricia Cole of the Human Defense Force. Today, we fought alongside the Veth Collective against the Morthac swarm. We did not fight for territory or resources. We fought because innocent people were dying, and we could not stand by and watch." She paused, letting the words settle across 1,000 worlds. "For 800 years, we were forgotten, locked away in a corner of space and left alone. But we never forgot who we are. We are humans. We protect the weak. We stand against tyranny. And we never, ever give up." In the Galactic Council chamber, the representatives listened in stunned silence. High Arbiter Vorath had no words. Everything he had believed about the galaxy had just been proven wrong. Elder Sela stood and walked to the center of the hall. "I move that we formally invite humanity to rejoin the galactic community, as equal partners, as allies." The vote was unanimous. Weeks later, Commander Porter stood on the bridge of the repaired Resolute, watching human ships patrol alongside Veth and Kalari vessels. The quarantine zone no longer existed. After 800 years, humanity was finally free. Thielen joined him at the viewport. The ambassador had become something like a friend over the past weeks. "I still think about that day in the council chamber," Thielen said, "when everyone told me humans were just a myth, a story for children." Porter smiled. "What do you think now?" Thielen watched a human fighter squadron fly past, escorting a Veth transport to safety. "I think the galaxy is very lucky that the stories were true." Far away, in the great archives of the Kalari Dominion, Elder Sela sat at her desk and began to write. Not myths this time, not legends. History. The history of how humanity returned to the stars, and how the galaxy changed forever.